This woman is a welfare cheat. Lidwina Madruga pretended to be a child care provider, fraudulently collecting over $83,000 in an elaborate scheme that worked like this. Two Rhode Island sisters, Barbara McMahon and Jamie Edwards, have 12 children between them. The Department of Human Services approved daycare assistance for them. The two sisters told Human Services that each day they drove the 12 children to this home in Lawrence, Massachusetts, where Madruga was providing daycare. Lawrence is an hour-and-a-half drive from Rhode Island. The women claim they were driving the children to Lawrence for daycare, driving back to Rhode Island for work, then back to Lawrence to pick up the kids, and back to Rhode Island. That's 370 miles a day, 6 hours of driving time. But the women lied. They were never driving children to Lawrence. The children were taken care of right here in Rhode Island. The two sisters, Barbara McMahon and Jamie Edwards, also collected welfare, food stamps, and medical assistance, while failing to disclose they had male breadwinners at home. Including the daycare scheme, the family defrauded the state out of more than $300,000.
This agency provides financial assistance to nearly 200,000 Rhode Islanders. That's nearly 20% of the population.
Rhode Island spends more than $1 billion a year on public assistance. While most people collect the benefits legally, fraud is a big problem, costing taxpayers millions. Sources familiar with the welfare fraud rate in Rhode Island tell the I-Team that there is much more fraud in the system than the Department of Human Services is currently detecting. In fact, the DHS director says attempted fraud detected at application time and the actual fraud caught in just 2 of the 5 public assistance programs for children and families, FIP and food stamps, amounts to $14 million a year alone. And Ronald LaBelle says there's no doubt that there's more fraud in the public assistance program, but says his agency has no way to document it.
Common sense would say, yes, it's because we're detecting at X level. Obviously, there is something more than that, but I can't say what percentage that might be specifically beyond what our experience is.
LaBelle claims his office investigates all complaints of fraud and there's no backlog. But over the past 3 years, the DHS investigators have only prepared 32 cases for prosecution, totaling about $830,000 in fraud. That averages to about only 10 cases per year. And our source says part of the problem is that the welfare fraud investigation should be a law enforcement function, not an administrative one as it is now. Attorney General Patrick Lynch, who prosecuted Madruga, McMahon, and Edwards and sent them to jail, says the welfare fraud problem in Rhode Island is huge.
That I think this is a bigger problem than any of us really realize.
Investigators say this Woonsocket home was the location of a daycare fraud scheme in which the homeowner allegedly used her grandchildren to rip off the system. The I-Team has learned the Department of Human Services paid the homeowner, Brenda Sturgis, $93,000 in child care provider payments to care for her own grandchildren.
We uncovered this. It wasn't based upon a tip from an outsider, so I think.
According to DHS investigators, Sturgis's grandchildren lived with her. The rules prohibit providers from receiving payments if the children live in the same home. The Department of Human Services turned the case over to the Attorney General's office for prosecution, but 4 years went by before anyone caught on.
In the Sturgis case, our own internal processes indicated that she was over-enrolled. She was requesting payment for children beyond her licensed capacity.
And here's something else that's troubling. Brenda Sturgis had a previous conviction for welfare fraud. That's right, she was approved as a child care provider even though she had already defrauded the system. According to DCYF rules, welfare fraud is not on the list of crimes that would preclude someone from being licensed as a child care provider.
My agency is not a law enforcement agency.
The Director of Human Services points out his department only began checking for child care fraud in 2004 after 2 additional investigators were hired. He says focusing on preventing fraud and recovering money is a more efficient use of his resources than a law enforcement approach. But is enough money being saved? Our examination of Department of Human Services records shows the agency's error rate has increased over the past 3 years. The error rate is tracked for the federal food stamp and family independence programs. It refers to cases in which fraud was suspected And the Department of Human Services was found to be responsible for an overpayment in benefits. In 2003, the agency error rate was 6.3%. It went up to 7.1% in 2004, and the error rate jumped again in 2005 to 9.4%.
He seemed like the man of their dreams, a worldly businessman looking for true love on the internet, though this computer Casanova is not what he seems, as Audrey Leganis reports in this iTeam exclusive.
He would say in his emails how, like, we were meant to be together. It was like kind of having like a love affair online.
Melissa logged on for love at singlesnet.com. She thought she had met her match in William Manteuffel.
He was a wealthy businessman that owned a fleet of shipping fishing trawlers.
He sent Melissa a photo of his private jet, which he supposedly used to fly between the East Coast and his business in Alaska. They courted online.
Every day I wake, the first thing I think of is you and your childlike love.
With Manteuffel striking all the right emotional chords.
I didn't realize how dark my world had become until you came into my life.
They met and got engaged.
I had total trust in him. He was paying for everything. Everything was cash. He had like tons of money in his wallet.
The couple made plans to fly to Alaska to be married. But the day they were to leave, Manteuffel said he was going out to check on his plane. She never heard from him again and found $2,000 in cash missing from her purse.
He's the best manipulator I've ever met.
And it turns out Melissa's not alone. The I-Team has spoken to other women who dated William Manteuffel after meeting him on singlesnet.com.
And he wrote back and he said, "What's a beautiful woman like you doing on singlesnet.com?" And that kind of opened a emotional floodgate with me.
Lois is one of them.
He said he was very much into honesty, so he needed some money to pay for servicing of the jet, and he had left his wallet and didn't have it with him, so he asked to borrow. Well, he didn't ask, I offered to lend him some money.
$1,000 later, Manteuffel disappeared.
I knew he was too good to be real, and kind of just confirmed what I had been suspecting, that he was a con artist.
According to Warwick Police, Manteuffel has 68 aliases and criminal records in 7 states. Police say he's actually homeless and was recently staying in a Boston shelter.
Frankly, I think that he's a very charming man. He's a very believable man. He knows how to walk the walk and talk the talk. He knows that the line between con and gift, even though he may have actually conned them into the gift.
In my mind, I felt that it was important for me to come forward and address this issue with you. And
the owner of singlesnet.com says he's sorry about what happened. He says his company goes to great lengths to protect subscribers from fraud.
We also scrub every transaction that comes through manually, so we're looking constantly at who is paying for the service, what types of communications are they making.
He points out deception could happen in any single setting, but he does advise singles take extra precautions when meeting online.
There are certain things that go on that may not go on in a bar scene.
If you're a single woman and you're meeting people online, beware, because this computer Casanova is still out there. Warwick Police have charged William Manteuffel with stealing from Melissa's wallet, and they have a warrant out for his arrest. Anyone with information about his whereabouts is asked to call Warwick Police. With this I-Team Consumer Report, Audrey Leganis, NBC 10 News.